Welcome to the Fi Guys podcast. My name is Chris, and I'm so happy that you're here with us today. Today, I'm going to be introducing a special guest in the attorney Paul Deloughery, author of the books Probate Made Simple and Lasting Wealth. Today, we're mostly going to be focusing on the book Lasting Wealth, which is how to create generational wealth and make sure that the money that you make in this generation persists over years and years and years. And please stick around because Paul was so open with us and got into all the emotions and the things that he made mistakes in his life. And I'm sure that you can learn something from there. At the end, we even do a little bit of financial therapy with him in order to help get him through a part that he's stuck with in his life. So stick around. This is the Fi Guys. Let's get into it. All right, Paul. So a few weeks ago, myself and my co-host Dominic, we created a podcast all about estate planning, and we had some really good feedback, and people were really scared about probate. So the reason I wanted to bring you on is I read your book, Probate Made Simple, and I wanted to talk about that. But then, in preparation for every single podcast, I try to read every book that I can from
Oh,
the
wow.
person coming on the podcast, and ended up reading your book, Lasting Wealth. And after reading this book, I decided that the probate thing can wait because this is something that we need to talk about right now.
Okay.
So first I want to get a little bit into your personal background, Paul, so the guests get to know you. Can you tell me what inspired you to write this book, Lasting Wealth?
The reason I wrote that book was I guess I needed to just get it out there. So when a person goes through a traumatic experience, it's helpful to express it as many times as necessary until the rawness of the experience wears off. And so that was partly the purpose. And then the other thing is I kind of just wanted to put a sense of purpose or meaning behind the experience I had. And we'll talk about what that is. So we won't talk in generalities this whole episode. But yeah, that was basically it. So I went through a kind of a traumatic experience. And frankly, the first half of my life has been, well, there's been trauma. I'll just leave it at that. I mean, basically, okay, so I had a wonderful childhood. My memories of it are wonderful. We had a very close-knit family, and I was raised by Henry Deloughery. He went by D because he was a 26-year veteran in the Navy, and no one could pronounce Deloughery, so they just said, he just agreed to just go by D.
Yep.
So anyway, and then so he was a great father to me. We used to go hunting, fishing, boating, like every weekend we were doing something. And growing up, like every meal we had at least something that we had hunted or fished or grown in the garden. So my experience now, I live in Phoenix, and the idea of going to a grocery store and getting salad in a bag it kind of sickens me. It just seems so unnatural compared to what, my roots and everything. Anyway, he died when I was 16 years old, and I grieved after him for a long time, for decades. Then I found out at the age of 35, and I go more into the detail in the book, but basically at the age of 35, I found out that he actually was not my father. I had a different biological father, and my mom and my my whole family, and pretty much everyone close to me had known about this and just kept it a secret from me, including parents of my friends in high school,
Oh,
like teachers in high school. Yeah. And so that was kind of traumatic.
did you ever find out, Paul, how those other people? I know I read the book, but did you ever find out how all those other people found out about the truth that was behind the matter?
Oh, I think it's hard. I think it's hard to keep a secret. And I think my mom, kind of as they got to know, got to have friends. They kind of, told friends, oh, this is the thing about our son, but just keep it a secret. It's kind of that. It's kind of informal. And then my mom was also a very powerful person. She had, I think there was some mental illness involved, like borderline personality disorder, but she was a force of nature for sure. She had a double PhD, like, super smart, all of this stuff. And people just knew not to cross her because once you made her an enemy of hers, I mean, she was not someone you wanted to make an enemy of. Anyway, so, yep, at the age of 35, I found out about my biological father. His name was Paul Wiest. And I communicated with him a little bit, but he was kind of a loner, and honestly, he was a Vietnam vet, and that kind of explains the psychology. I mean, you don't, for anyone who's known a Vietnam veteran, or honestly, a veteran of any combat. I mean, you almost just that's almost all you have to say, because there's stuff there that like they've seen stuff that no one else can experience, and so they kind of they end up being a little bit more isolated, I think, from the general
Yeah,
population. Yeah,
I'd
so
agree.
yeah. So I talked to him, and then all he wanted to do was talk about political things, and like he was forwarding me political jokes that I just didn't get at the time.
And and, and this was your biological father,
My
correct? That you
biological
met when you were in
father.
your 30s? Okay.
Right, right. And he wanted to talk about investing. And honestly, neither one of those were on my radar at the time. I had small kids. As a father, I was a busy lawyer trying to get my career going. And anyway, so what he like his whole frame of reference just I couldn't relate to it. And so I told him, listen, I want to have a relationship with you, but if all we're going to do is share comics back and forth, and I'm not interested in that, and I don't know anything about investing. I mean, you can teach me, but he didn't anyway. He just kind of stopped communicating at that point. And then, oh, what was it, 2017. In 2017, um my mom came from Minnesota. Excuse me. My mom came from Minnesota, uh, to visit us here in Scottsdale, and it was I think it was like the day before she was supposed to leave. That like it was in the morning, and she asked what I knew about my father. And, because she and I had some conflict. I found out that she had been lying about me for years, and
Yeah.
that was, yeah, I had an issue with that. And anyway, she finally asked me what I knew. I had a little folder. I don't even know where it is anymore, but I had a folder with some emails in it, and I just laid it on the counter, and I said, help yourself. I don't care. And I went to work. And then, let's see, later she watched our kids, and then what was it, tina tina my wife got home first and called me and said that my mom was laying on the ground, and the TV was on, and the kids were, Bridget and Aiden, I think they were 2 and 4 at the time, or something like
Oh
that.
my goodness.
Or no, well, they would have been older. 2007, let me do the math on that. Anyway, like 3 and 5 or something. Anyway, um and so they were sitting on the sofa watching the TV, and it was like like they just had this glassy look in their eyes, like they didn't know what to do, because here's their nana on the ground, passed out. And so anyway, Tina got there. I guess she got woke her up, and got her up, and then I came home, and what was it? We tried to talk, and she had, well, long story short, it turns out that I think probably she got really upset about the memories and what she saw in the emails, and thinking about things and all that stuff. I think she self-medicated with some over-the-counter medicines. I think
Hmm.
that's what happened. And so, like, she was really doped up though. And we tried to, oh, she was like, barely, we were in the kitchen, she was holding herself up, like barely able to hold herself up. At one point, well, I was trying to get her to just lay down, just to go to bed, and she refused, or to, and then she said at one point, Paul, there's something important I need to tell you. And I said, well, just want you to go to sleep, like, we can talk about this in the morning. Okay, I don't know what's going on. But and I tried to take her to the hospital. She refused. I finally ended up helping her to bed, and she made this, oh boy, I don't know how to describe it, like a guttural sigh that came from, deep within her. And that was
Yeah.
the last sound I think that was the last sound she made. I think she actually died at that point. But I didn't know. I thought she passed. I thought she made a groan and passed out. And so I put the quilts over her, the blankets over her and everything. And then the next morning, I went in to check on her, and she was cold. So that was it. So kind of the family joke is the last thing my mom told me is, Paul, there's something important I need to tell you. So
That's quite a dark joke. That must have been quite dramatic for both you and your kids and your wife all at
Oh
once.
yeah.
I've been around death myself, and that last agonal gasp that someone has, it's a sound that doesn't go away. Like, it's a sound
Yeah.
that you kind of can just hear
Yeah.
indefinitely. Now, you kind of alluded to earlier about your father and his passing, and he was really into stocks, but can you share what personal experiences shaped your views on wealth preservation? What was it that got you to want to write this book? Because I know you kind of said it, but what happened there?
So I've now had years to look back on this, so I think I can give a more true answer to that question. My mom and my parents in general, like, really instilled the idea of family values and family, respecting your family history and, working together and all of that kind of thing. And then that together with, I don't know exactly where it came from, but I've always been fascinated with estate planning and, how some families are successful and some aren't, and how that actually works. Um, so that had already been in place. Then uh, I met my biological father, Paul Wiest, for the first time in 2009. He died 6 weeks later. I found out he had a $28 million estate. Half that went to taxes, and there I was, left with unanswered questions and, a huge hole in my heart, and, you know, a relationship that I had longed for years. And instead of any of that, I got some money. So I thought it was
Yeah,
some kind of a sick consolation prize. And so I wasn't super careful with it. I thought I thought I was, but I mean, subconsciously, I was guaranteed to sabotage that thing.
yeah,
That was a foregone conclusion, just because I made risky investments and trusted the wrong people. And if you understand, like, for me to grow up with this lie about who my real my, because I had been born as a Paul Wiest, but on my birth
yeah,
certificate as Paul Deloughery. And I grew up with a different stepdad, and he was wonderful, but he didn't take the next step of actually adopting me. So, and I guess from a financial standpoint, it was good because I ended up inheriting that from
yeah.
my
If
biological dad. But still, like, from a feeling standpoint, and he was really, really good to me. I mean, really good to me. But there's just that last little piece, like, really, you couldn't just do that last little thing. Anyway, so that was, I was kind of stuck with that. And then, yeah, so I what I was going to say is, part of the whole story is, in my family on both sides, is alcohol abuse. And
mhm.
that, along with that, comes codependency, because, if you have an alcoholic, then you have someone else who's enabling that, who doesn't know how to keep boundaries. And so I grew up being told what my feelings should be, and
Oh,
never being asked how I did feel. And I grew up being told what I should think, and never, being really asked what I think.
what do you
And
actually
be,
think?
and choices were made for me. Yeah, and I don't remember either of my parents ever asking me, "Hey, what would you like to do?" I don't remember that ever happening. I remember a lot of things like, here's this thing. I found Irish dance classes for you. Oh, you should take Irish dance classes. Here, I'm going to sign you up. Wouldn't that be really great? Like, okay, mom. I mean, like, it wasn't really like, here's an option, yes or no.
Yeah,
I don't
a
care.
lot of your
No.
personal agency was kind of taken away, or your personal
Oh,
agency was stripped from you.
yeah, absolutely. And that's not a good background to be a lawyer. And especially
Mhm.
when I started to get into litigation, and I was bumping up against that personal flaw, pretty immediately. And then, yeah, and then having a whole bunch of money and having to, protect myself and set boundaries and rules and expectations, and be a controller, as opposed to this passive person, and, like, just trusting people, and, yeah, not setting boundaries and all that kind of stuff. So no, it was a disaster. And there,
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, let's talk about that. So you mentioned a few things that I found very interesting. Number one is you said you inherited, like you got the consolation prize from your father's estate, and you ended up getting, um, upwards of the lower teens in the millions, 14,
Hmm.
$14 million around.
Hmm.
And you said that at that time, looking back on it, you knew you were going to lose it. And something that I always try to tell my guests
Oh
is money
no.
is,
Oh
is
no. No, 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 no. No, no, no. My mindset was, okay, half of it went to taxes. Now I need to be aggressive and make that up again. So I was looking at aggressive investments and, like, I mean, huge amounts were going in and out and all this stuff. And like, that totally changed my mindset and just naturally, without some preparation, it made me very, I don't know, make, big decisions without,
what kind of people did you surround yourself with to get your advice? I know that you said you had a financial advisor or someone like that maybe led you astray. What kind of happened there?
I I did not trust a financial advisor, because most financial advisors, like I I just didn't connect with them. Like,
Mhm.
they're saying, "Oh, poor thing about your father. Well, here we should get into some safe investments." But here, in my mind, I'm thinking, Okay, well, my father turned a military retirement um, into $28 million by investing in penny stocks. And you want me to get into, and that sounds really cool. Like, if anything, I want to connect with my father. So I'd rather learn that. Even if I make
Mhm.
mistakes, I'd rather try to do that. And so, yeah, I was trying to do investing on my own as opposed to delegating to someone else to do these mutual funds. And then just from a feelings or I don't know, connection standpoint, like I just didn't feel like they understood me. I didn't feel heard. And I'm that would have been a tall order for someone to be able to step in and connect with me. And unfortunately, the people I connected with were other people who worked with big amounts of money and were big picture people and connected, I don't know, were very friendly with me and all of that, which is kind of the definition of a con artist. So I
Yeah.
surrounded myself essentially with con artists. And I mean, one was actually a couple of them were CPAs and a couple of them were other things, but they weren't they well, and then there was one genuine con artist, like the real deal, up in Portland, Oregon, and he's still doing it. It's a art business where. I mean, there's a business model there. Basically, they make sculptures and then they provide those to schools and for their school auctions, for their fundraisers. And the thing is that if they have to sell it for a certain minimum, and then as long as they do that, then the school gets 50% of the profit and the business gets 50% of the profit. Sounds like a real business, and all of that. The problem was the business was always struggling with money, and so anyway, it's a long story, but I dumped. Well, you can imagine. I mean, I went through almost $14 million. So, uh,
Yeah.
but uh, not all of it. Let's say I went through about $12 million, but so and a good chunk of that was tied in with that one guy. So, but he's very friendly, and I I have to say I don't know if this sounds sick or if I'm still stupid or what, but like if he came to town, I'd hang out with him. I mean, he's a very pleasant guy to hang out with, and we'd joke and we'd have fun and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I'll never trust him again. But but
Yeah.
but but I mean, the thing is, like, that kind of a guy, it's amazing at how he just has this like puppy dog personality. Like, you just have to love him. He's always smiling and he's your best friend and you know
It's
do yeah, anyway.
it's difficult. I studied my undergraduates in psychology, so it sounds a little bit like sociopathy, where this guy is able to maybe not feel emotions, maybe not but he can mimic your emotions very well. And
Probably.
when we're
Yeah.
looking for that connection, we're looking for another person that's mimicking our emotions. So when we're happy, they're happy. When we're sad, they're sad. But in truth, in their mind, they can't conceive of what you're feeling, but they know how to play that game very, very well, the mimicking. So you saying in a sick way, him,
Yeah.
if you came back, you would still want to be his friend because
Yeah.
maybe in a way you're still looking for that connection that feels so real because he makes it feel real.
Right.
But
Right.
in truth, maybe he doesn't like, I don't know, Paul, maybe he
Right.
doesn't care at all. He's trying to
No,
get his next
no,
buck.
no, I think you're right. I think you're right. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it's like I don't know. I mean, nowadays there's AI girlfriends, and where they can, I don't know how the programming works, but they understand our emotions and they express empathy and all that kind of stuff. Is it real? No, it's a computer program, but it sure feels real at the time. So,
Yeah. But it's strange, where we're getting off topic, but when you
yeah.
think about that, like that's not life at all. Life, that's the reason that so many people have affairs, is because they look to this other person and they just think of all the positives. They think of like, oh, maybe the sex is great, we have good conversations. But with my real life, like, it gets messy and it gets hard. And that's life. Life is hard. And the way that you grow is by growing through those hard times with that person. But when you're looking for someone that you're falling in lust with, you're not looking for the hard. And then when things get hard, because eventually it will, I guarantee it, that's when everything implodes
Yeah.
for both relationships, unfortunately. So I'd like to get back to what we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier. You mentioned that your family kind of instilled some values in you. And what I would like to call that maybe is family legacy. So
Sure.
how do you define family legacy, and why do you think it's important for families to define early on for creating generational wealth?
That's a great question. And the answer, this is not just my opinion. This is what studies show, that children who understand the family's history are much more likely to be successful. So, and I don't just mean history like, the name of your grandfather and that kind of thing. Like the actual stories, the nitty gritty, dirty, ugly stories about, this happened and losing a job or losing the farm. Here, Grandma and Grandpa Deloughery lost the farm in the 1930s, and figured out how to get through it. And then he worked on construction in Canada and actually helped build Highway 1 in Canada. So that kind of a thing. And that's the kind of story that helps, I think, the next generation kind of know, I don't know, gives them a background, I guess, and know that they can get through hard times now. Yeah. And listen, my family is not perfect. I mean, looking at some of, oh, let's see. I almost went on a political tangent here, but I won't. There are successful families in this day and age that, where the children are successful and the grandchildren are successful and they're close and loving and all of that. And yeah, it's not all perfect. I mean, some of the kids there are always little secrets and things that the public doesn't know about, of course. But I think in my family, honestly, oh my gosh, my family is full of it. Like I have an uncle who, uh, I think at last count, he had 14 children. We've discovered that he had 14 children, and
Wow.
some of those like 2 months apart. So if you do the math on that, like obviously it
Yeah.
wasn't with the same mom, So there's some dark stuff in my family, but I mean, my kids know about me. I mean, just things that I've gone through. Shoot, with getting 14 million, losing it, having to go through the shame of that. Like most people, if you tell the average person that happened, no, it didn't happen to me. That it happened. That I made the choices I did. Most people would think I was stupid or that kind of thing. So I went through years of not just kind of hiding out and not. I kind of told my story, but I told it in a very timid
In a
kind of
different
way.
way.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, knowing my kids, knowing that I've gone through that and that that I'm healed and moving forward. I mean, that's the kind of thing that helps them. And so it's just really important for, for the listeners, if you have family stories like that, like make sure your kids know about it. It's super important. And the other thing that I've noticed, so I do estate planning and probate, and I do some pretty heavy probate litigation. Like I take cases that other law firms turn away. I have to say that there's almost no relationship, and I'm going to shock you right now. There's almost no relationship between whether you have a will and a trust, and whether the next generation is, peacefully, successfully going to inherit money. There's almost no correlation. The correlation I've seen, if there's addiction or abuse or family secrets, then it's almost certain that you're going to have litigation and fighting, when a loved one passes away. That's the correlation I've seen. And so that's why, honestly, it all comes down to, you can run away from this stuff, but it's going to, if it doesn't bite, it's going to bite your kids. Like it's going to, and I think, that's where it is in the Bible, where it says, the sins of the father, are visited upon the
Passed
seventh
down
generation. Yeah. And, and the sins, I'm not talking about like doing bad things. Specifically, I'm talking about not being real. Okay, just not dealing with your shit. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube or where this is, but yeah, if you don't deal with that, someone in 3 generations in the future is going to deal with it. That's the way it is. And I'm not talking about weird reincarnation kind of stuff. No, it's very practical. If you don't deal with something, then that's messing up your personality and making you, psychotic in some kind of, or messed up in some kind of way that's interfering with your ability to have a loving relationship with your kids. And your kids' experience then of their parent is that the parent was closed off, didn't love them, there were secrets, all of that stuff. So then you've created this situation where the kids are messed up, and good luck to them trying to raise their kids. So yeah, it's really important. I'm not sure if this is a psychology podcast or what, but no, it's it's super important. And the funny thing, I guess, because I've dealt with some of this messed up stuff myself. I mean, oh my gosh, it was painful for years. It was really painful for me, but it's kind of cool now because I feel like I can really help people. Not necessarily just as a lawyer. I mean, I get people. Shoot, I had a homeless guy who contacted me recently, and there's not really much I can do for him. Yeah, he has a gripe against a brother that did something, probably shouldn't have done this, but I can't. There's only so much time I have, and so I can't take his case, unfortunately. But I tried to like give him some good man-to-man.
Send him in the right direction. Like, this
Send
is
him
what
in
I
the
can
right
tell
direction.
you.
Yeah. Anyway,
and good luck. One thing that I was thinking of is, you were saying, I was going to get to, like, what are the biggest pitfalls that families face when they're trying to pass wealth across generations? And I think you really hit the nail on the head there. And it's trying to keep secrets or not tell their stories. And to your point there, you said that you went through, losing a lot of money, and you felt silly, and maybe you felt shameful. So what do people do when they feel shame? Is they hide it. But in order for us to be able to move in front of that, to tell our children, and to basically stop these generational sins, is we need to bite that bullet and do the hard thing today so that we can have the easy life tomorrow. Be and tell the truth. Us as humans, the thing that separates us from all other animals in the kingdom is that we have the ability to tell stories. And if you don't tell your story, your truth, then unfortunately your kids are going to come up with their own story. And the story they tell themselves in their mind is going to be most likely far worse than the actual story and the real truth. So, sometimes I'll hear people say, oh yeah, my mom and dad, they'll say things like, oh, credit cards are always bad because, the credit cards are the thing that got me to be financially unwell, rather than the parents accepting responsibility that they made bad decisions. And now they're in this bad situation. And now the kids take this false thought of all credit cards bad and I can't use them, or, whatever thought that they have. Investing is bad because someone was investing in penny stocks when they should have not been doing that. And now they're like, I'm never going to invest money, and I'm going to create wealth by working really hard and just saving my money underneath my shoebox, which we all know is not a way to actually be able to generate true wealth.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I have to tell you a story. This is really funny. So, I was looking for someone to ghostwrite or help me write the book, that Lasting Wealth book. And this is, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something. And so I talked to this ghostwriter, and I told him my the story I wanted to say. And his response was, "You were so stupid. I would have never been that stupid." So I almost I almost decided to not pursue it, but I kind of took it with humor, and I just found someone else to help me.
I think a lot of people, they like to, one of the things that we do on the podcast, we do something called a viewer mailbag. So every Friday, someone writes into the podcast and they write us a letter as to what's going on in their life. And then I try to give them the best advice that I possibly can, while of course making it
Wow.
like not personalized because I don't know them. And some of the comments we get are like, these people are so stupid. How can you not like know what he's going to say? How'd you get yourself into this situation? But I guarantee you that you too, listener, you have your blind spots too. And the reason you can't see them is because they're your blind spots. But anyone else looking at you could be like, the answer is so clear.
Right.
And because they're not in that situation. When you're in the
Right.
situation, you can't detach. That ability to detach and get that 10,000-foot view is something that's extremely difficult, and something that takes so much time to be able to build that up in yourself, to get away from the emotions, get away from everything you're feeling in your body and your mind, and be able to see this unobjectively, and then be able to see the truth through the weeds and know that I don't like what I have to do to get out of this, but I still have to do it. Where so many people are looking for that quick fix. What can I do to get out of this and not have to put in the hard work?
Yeah.
There's really not a way to not put in the hard work and escape this life.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about education and communication with the family, because I really want to talk about like what is the secret sauce to creating lasting wealth within the family. Is unfortunately one of the big things that's going on right now is people are selling, or a lot of brokers are selling like waterfall trusts, and they're telling people, hey, let's create this trust. Once you die, your kids are going to inherit all this money, and then they're going to be rich. And what I'm seeing from this is, you currently don't have wealth, but you're trying to give your kids wealth. And we're not thinking about, how are these kids going to inherit this money? Would you rather give your kid $1 million, or would you teach your kid how to get $1 million? Because I think we've seen it, that the worst thing someone can do is win the lottery, because after they win the lottery, a year later, they're broke and most of them are dead. And so we have to be able to learn how to do this. So what are some effective ways that we can educate our family members about financial matters while we're still alive, in order to start creating this generational wealth, this good family firm that we want?
Well, I'm probably not the right person to speak about how to educate them. I can't talk about structurally what not to do. So, structurally, what you don't do is remove the incentive to do anything. And I see that so often. Like, you're talking about waterfall trusts, and, where there's discretionary payments or monthly allowances or something. Okay, well, good job. So you've done two things now. You've removed the incentive for the next generation to work, and for future generations, as long as the money's there. And at some point, you've created a generation that has expensive tastes and no work ethic. And I think it's healthier and more loving to the next generation to give them nothing, because at least then they know how to work. And
Yeah.
someone can always make money. I mean, unless you're handicapped or something. Okay, that's a different thing. I got that. Aside from that, shoot, humans are meant to walk uphill. I think Jordan Peterson said that. We're meant to walk uphill. We're not meant to, sit around and, drink margaritas. Happiness does not come from sitting around drinking margaritas. Happiness comes from, you have to be going
about
into you have to have some headwind. You have to have some headwind and doing something. And then you can look back, have the sense of accomplishment. And, that, I mean, to me, that's the happiness. Happiness is not like some eternal state of bliss. I don't even think that's possible. I mean, unless you're, well, I guess it is possible. You can be an alcoholic or a drug addict, and you can honestly get into an eternal state of bliss as a drug
but
addict. But it's
even
not
there,
going to last.
yeah, even there, they're never in eternal bliss. They're constantly looking for that new hit. Even Buddhists, you might say like, oh, a Buddhist who can meditate and finally hit nirvana. If you look at like Buddhism, which is something I study, is every year you're working to get this momentary happiness
Yeah.
of joy, but it's also the knowledge that this goes away. And I think that's
Right.
part of the human condition. We
Right.
are all conditioned to strive to get better. And it's, you talk about Jordan Peterson, I'll talk about Ray Dalio. It's going into that forest and getting a little bit better. And then you go up and you fall down, you go up and you fall down. But after you make it through the forest, rather than saying like, I've made it through the forest, I can finally be happy, the goal should now be, in order to continue
Right.
that happiness, is to go back through the forest and guide other people through that forest and tell them like, hey, watch out
Yep.
for that snake pit. watch out for this,
Ti-
because that's where I fell into. And that's what I
yeah,
see in you,
time,
Paul, is
time,
you're trying to help people with that.
yeah, time and time again. It's like the situation where someone wins a gold medal in the Olympics, and then, for the next couple of years, like they, lay around and get fat and, are depressed because there's, they don't have that goal, they don't have that thing that they're working for anymore. And then, or, then they decide to get back into the Olympics, and then they lose the weight and they get back in shape, and then they're kicking butt and they're happy again until they win the gold medal. Then they're unhappy. So
Yeah. And I went through that same thing. My goal for so long was achieving financial independence so that I could retire early. Like, that was the goal. And then one day I finally hit that magic number in my bank account. And I thought that when I hit that magic number, or in my investment accounts, and I thought I'd finally be happy. And then what immediately followed was extreme depression, because you hit your goal and you realize, when I hit my goal, I thought I was finally going to be happy. I thought I was finally going to find that everlasting peace. And that was an illusion that your brain created to get you there. And I think we all know, or we're starting to learn now, that everyone thinks they want more dopamine in their brain, but what dopamine is, the seeking. It's the seeking molecule. So we're trying to constantly
mm,
get it. The moment that we get what we want, dopamine stops and we release
right,
serotonin. And
right,
serotonin is very, very quick. It's a quick hit, feels great, but then immediately I need more dopamine. But dopamine
right,
isn't released if you're sitting around all day drinking
right,
margaritas. And without that purpose in life, that's where people really fall into extreme despair. That's why retirees often will die a few years after retiring, is because,
yeah.
in truth, to retire is really to expire if you don't have purpose. And not to say that work is the only thing that can give you purpose, but you have to go out and find what's going to give you purpose in life.
I want to ask for advice from you then, because
Of
this
course.
is actually something that I'm struggling with. I find myself, and I don't know if I want to use the word happy, but I have meaning in my life if I'm struggling and working hard. And I just talked to an old friend last night, and he had a business. He sold it. Actually, it was a rundown bar here in Phoenix, and he bought it some years ago, fixed it up, sold it, and he also had some family money. Anyway, and I asked him, what are you doing now? And he didn't really have an answer. Like, he rides his motorcycle, and short answer, he's retired and kind of bums around. Ah, I don't know. Honestly, don't know if I could do that. I honestly don't know. And so I might be self-sabotaging myself in terms of not, like, purposely not hitting, the number that I know I need for financial freedom because I'm terrified of it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. I read your book, and I think I know the answer to this. So I want to dig it down deeper with you. Growing up, tell me, what did your parents teach you about work ethic, about putting in the hard work versus being able to just kind of chill? Do you have um, that chill gear inside of you right now? Can you feel comfortable chilling and not working and not striving, not getting better every day?
It's a little rusty. What I was raised with were, um, another day, and I don't know, and then just there wasn't a whole lot of words to it, but just the action was like, you just work really hard during the week, and then on the weekends you relax. I didn't think my parents really loved what they did, but they did it because it brought money. Um,
Mhm.
so, and yeah, and then when my stepdad died when I was 16, we had to sell the house quick because the house was mortgaged, in order to pay for another business that had gone under. And so, yeah, there were some there were some issues with that. And I saw my mom then spend, I don't know, probably 8 years where, this sounds incredible, but my mom, for a good chunk of that time, was working two full-time jobs. So, just to, as a nurse, to pay off debt and everything. And she refused to file bankruptcy. So, yeah,
Well,
that's kind of my background.
what I hear there, and what I'm thinking is, what I think you learned from watching your parents is, in order to be successful, in order to be a good person, I have to work hard. I have to be hardworking all the time. You saw your mom pull herself out by working two jobs, which is not easy to do. And maybe you've internalized that in order to be a good person, I have to be a hard worker. And if I'm not working hard every day, if I get to that point where I'm financially independent and I don't have to work hard, am I going to lose my edge? And if I lose my edge, will that make me a bad person in that
Well,
I'm not working hard anymore?
there's something else too, which is I didn't really experience what do you call it? Unconditional love growing up. Like I got approval from my parents if I did something. Like, you know, if I got an A plus, if I got a B plus, that was, you know, I kind of got the look and, you know, like, you know, not the same level of approval. So I ended up working really hard, you know, so that I could get the look of approval. And like, why? I mean, looking back at it, why did I care about a look of approval? But I mean, it's important for children, I guess. So,
Well, to be fair, Paul, it's important for all of us. All of
yeah,
us were social creatures. None of us
yeah,
lives in a vacuum by ourselves. We fear. This is the reason that it's so pernicious with teenagers. We are social animals. And if we feel, or if a mother isn't giving you their love, or if it's conditional love, then we will do, or you and all humans have taken it upon themselves that the reason my mom isn't giving me the love that I need isn't an issue with her. It's an issue with me. I need to do something different. But you as a child, you were perfect, Paul. There was nothing wrong with you in any way, shape, or form. But all of us, you, myself, everyone got messed up because we believed that there was something
yeah,
not right with us, or we would be loved unconditionally. But in truth, you should have been loved unconditionally just for mere existence of you being
right,
alive.
right. So I guess I mentioned that because, and I know this sounds crazy, but it's real. I work really hard in order to make my dead mom proud of me.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Paul. How do you feel about yourself when you're by yourself?
Oh my gosh, we're still recording this.
I could cut it off if
No,
you
no,
need
no.
to,
It's
but
okay. It's okay. Who cares? I'm learning to change the self-talk. But before I couldn't stand it. Now it's okay, you know. But I've had to reprogram the voices in my head or tell them to shut up. And
yeah,
I call him Marty. I've named it the crazy
good.
person.
I'm glad.
His name's Marty, and I periodically have to tell him to leave the room because I have to work or I need to just chill out or relax or something.
And we all have those. We all contain multitudes. We're not one single person.
Yeah,
I wish we were. I wish I could be just the guy who's always going hard, but I'm not. I'm the guy that's sad sometimes. I'm the guy that's all these things, and that's us fundamentally. But the reason I ask you, how do you feel about yourself when you're by yourself, is because I believe that is the most important question.
mm,
And if once you can answer that, once you're happy, sometimes the loudest thing to be is be in silence. That's
mm,
why so many people, they're constantly moving from next thing to the next thing. I need to be busy. I need to be busy. I need to be busy. And maybe the reason I need to be busy is because I don't want to be alone with myself.
mm,
I don't want to achieve financial independence, because if I achieve financial independence, if I get to this mountaintop, I might have to start to figure out what's inside of me and figure that stuff out.
yeah,
And from someone that's been dealing with that for the past few years of me dealing with myself every single day, I can tell you it's extremely hard. One of the hardest things I've ever done, but it's also the most rewarding. It's connected me with my wife, with my animals, with people in such a larger way, to feel like I can't fix the world until I start to fix myself internally. So what I would say is, if you want to get past those, maybe those mental blocks that we have that may be stopping you from getting to the next place that you want to go, therapy might, I honestly just say, like, therapy
sure.
might be the thing to do it, because you have to look into that. And I guarantee you there's something in your past that's holding you back. There's an old adage that I used to use with my clients where whenever we're born, we start with 100 soldiers with us. And those soldiers are there to protect us. And as we walk through life, we come up against traumas. And whenever we come up against those traumas, some of those soldiers have to stay back and they have to protect us from that trauma. But we continue marching on and marching on and marching on. Well, eventually, when you finally hit the end of the road and you finally have made it to where you want to go, you might have a few soldiers left, but you made it at least. But now all these other soldiers that stayed back, you want to go back and save them, because no man left behind. And if you go back and you save them, it means that they're still fighting that monster. And you, as a middle-aged man, may have to confront something that happened when you were 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, and you have spent your entire life burying that stuff. But now you have to go back there and you have to fight with that soldier in order to protect him, in order to make yourself whole.
Mhm.
And it's hard because you're going to have to look at something that you have purposely pushed down for years and years and years in order to move forward and
Mhm.
keep on moving. Because in truth, there is no end. You keep on marching until the end of our days.
Yeah. Yeah, I found some meditations that helped. And this is interesting. I'm sure there's some dark psychology to this, but I found some overcoming childhood trauma meditations, and there's different versions of it or whatever. But I was doing that for a little bit, not too long ago. It was just a couple of months ago, and I did it for probably a couple of weeks, and then I started to feel really good, and I stopped, and the funny thing, like, I had made a commitment that I was going to do it for 30 days, and I didn't. I did it for not quite 2 weeks, and then I started to feel good, and like, I don't need this anymore. But
Yeah, I've made it. I'm happy now. And
yeah, but no, it's um and maybe it's that shoot, I don't know the analogy, but I mean, I think it's a process that I should probably go back to doing that.
I'd recommend it. I've been meditating for over a decade now, and I'll tell you that the times that I feel best is when I'm doing it, even when I don't need it,
Yeah.
because we don't rise to the level that we expect us. We fall to the level of our training. I teach jujitsu too, as I'm a jujitsu instructor,
Hmm.
and I always tell people, like, if you think that in the street, if you get in a fight, that it's going to go as well as it goes here, it's going to go to the worst level that you are here.
Yeah.
So let's make sure that your best level here is better, because in the real world, when life happens, you want to have that practice you fall back on. Same thing with fitness, right? The reason we
Yeah.
work out every day isn't because we're going to go and run 20 miles every single day. We do it to feel better every single day, with the knowledge
Yep.
that, hey, maybe one day it's going to happen. So I know that we have to close out here.
Yep.
What things would you like, Paul, to maybe tell the audience about finding a good financial advisor, finding a good attorney to help you? I think one thing that we really did talk about is that it really does maybe take a village sometimes, and maybe one individual is not strong enough to figure out all these things by themselves. So do you have any advice for our listeners on what they can do to find maybe a good estate planner, a good attorney, a good financial advisor, just someone that they can trust, so that they don't end up in the same place that you were, where you're trusting people that maybe didn't deserve that trust?
Okay. This is hard advice. Find the persistence or the perseverance to keep looking until you get the answer that makes sense. Because just because you've talked to 5 financial advisors or 5 attorneys and they don't have the answer for you, and everything looks hopeless, that just means that those people didn't have the answer for you. That doesn't mean the answer doesn't exist. I mean, the answer exists. I mean, ultimately, if we had all the answers, we would all be enlightened, and we'd be able to, like, move mountains with our mind power, and create a house, like turn water into wine, that kind of thing. Like, we're all far from that, and we're all at different stages of being far from that. That's what I wish someone would have told me back then, because I just got frustrated, because I talked to some, and I'd been an attorney, and I talked to a whole bunch of different financial advisors, and I knew that none of those people connected with me, and so I assumed that there weren't any that would connect with me or be able to give me advice. And I know now that was that's just not true. I just wasn't
Mhm.
looking hard enough, and I gave up, and I made assumptions.
Perfect. Well, Paul, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on today, for being so open, sharing your story with the listeners. Hopefully, they're going to be able to take some of the things that happened to you, while they may have not happened to everyone, but you can always glean wisdom from other people's things. And please learn from other people's failures. We hope that you never have to fail in life, but in truth, you learn so much more from your failures than you do your success. If you win,
Yeah.
you win, but if you lose, you learn. So, Paul, as we close
Yeah.
out, I'd like to throw it to you. Is there anything that you'd like to tell our audience, or what can the audience go to find you in case they're interested in connecting with you? Anything like that?
Sure. Go to my main website. It's Sudden Wealth Protection Law, and I'm going to spell it out because people butcher this all the time. It's
Please do.
Sudden, Sudden. It's not Southern. It's Sudden Wealth, not Wales, is Wealth, Wealth, protectionlaw.com. And yeah, just you can call or whatever, and I'm pretty open about talking to people.
Perfect.
So thank
And
you.
then, Paul, obviously we're called the FI guys, and FI stands for financial independence. So I just like to ask everyone, because I find that everyone has a different thing to them. What does financial independence mean to you? Or if you were financially independent today, would anything change in your?
If I was financially independent today, I would travel more, but I would still, I'd still want to be helping people because I really find meaning in that. That's like the one thing that, as long as I've gone through all this stuff myself, I may as well help other people because I kind of heal in the process and I can help, it helps me connect and it makes me feel good. And so I guess financial independence would be just being able to do that voluntarily as opposed to having to.
I love that. Being able to control what you want to do already, something you would do anyways, but now the money isn't in the way.
And that's a great question, by the way. So thank you for asking it.
Of course. Paul, thank you so much for joining us here on the Fi Guys. And until next week, guys, or we'll see you on Fi Friday Feedback. This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.